Welcome friends. So this is the third video on this series, place of supply. So we've seen the first video, which is basics of place of supply, and the second video where we went through this table, which is the five specific services, where we saw what will be for these five services, what is the place of supply. Like say, especially in the point of view of section 12, that if you're dealing with a registered person, then for these five services, its default the place of supply is the place of such registered persons. However, if it is B2C, that is business to consumer, that is unregistered person is the customer, then in that case, each five services has different place of supply, right? So we saw these five services for section 12 and its comparison, what would it be in case if it's section 13? What is the corresponding place of supply in section 13? So what is the difference between 12 and 13, guys? 12 is where the supplier and the recipient, both of their location is in India, and section 13, either party can be outside India. If either party, either the supplier or the recipient, if they are outside India, then you need to refer 13. If both of them are in India, then you need to go to section 12, right? So what are those five services? A quick recap before we go into the current video. So the five services, if you remember, the acronym we had is T3OI, right? So there were three T's: transportation of goods, transportation of passengers, training and performance appraisal services, right? So these were the three T's, and then you had IO, insurance services, organization of an event. So these five services are the default services we saw in the last video. So if you look at the place of supply for these services. So for these five, if it is a B2B customer, as we discussed, it is location of the registered person, as we can see here. If it is going to be a B2C customer, then it is for training and performance appraisal service, the location where the training is held. Like we saw with examples in the last video. In transportation of goods, if both of you are in India, then the place where you are handing over the goods for transportation, that place will be the place of supply, right? However, if the goods are going to go to a destination which is outside India, right? So then place of supply will be the destination of goods, even though the supplier and the recipient are within India, right? So this is transportation of goods. Transportation of passengers, the location where the passenger embarks the conveyance, where he embarks. You need to look at where the passenger embarks the conveyance on a continuous journey. That is the place of supply, right? So insurance services, guys, it is the location of the recipient on records of the supplier, right? So what is the location of recipient? LOR on the supplier's records, that is the insurance company's records, that will be the place of supply, right? Organization of an event, it is the location where the event is actually held, right? So organization of event, if you remember in the last video, we saw examples like destination weddings, right? So where the destination wedding is going to happen, an event manager is going to organize the complete wedding, right? So if it is happening, let's say in Delhi, then the Delhi will be the place of supply, right? So however, if it is happening in Switzerland, but the event manager and the customer, the bride or the groom, they are in both of them are in India. It is a supplier, the event manager and the customer, both of them in India, but the destination is wedding is happening in Switzerland, right? In that case, the destination is outside India. So will the POS be outside India? No, because the LOR and LOS is in India. In that case, the place of supply will be the location of recipient wherever the customer is located, right? So this is the proviso we saw, and the corresponding section 13, guys. So for training and performance operation services, it is the general rule. No, that is the location of recipient as per section 13. You don't have a corresponding training and performance appraisal specifically there in section 13, right? So transportation of goods. So here in 12 you saw the place where you hand it over for transportation. In section 13, it is the location of destination of goods, right? You need to see if either party is outside India, where the goods is going, the destination of the goods, that will be the place of supply, right? What about transportation of passengers? It is same, guys, same as section 12, where the passenger embarks the conveyance on a continuous journey, that will be the place of supply, right? Insurance services, again, section 13 does not specifically talk about insurance service, hence you need to refer to the general rule, more specific rule for insurance in section 13. Organization of an event, Yes, there is a corresponding section 13. For organization of an event, it is again same as section 12. It is location where the event is actually held, right? But there is no proviso like outside India situation. There's nothing like that. If either party is outside India, you will refer section 13. And if it's an organization of an event service, section 13 says the location where the event is actually held, that location will be the place of supply. Let's say the destination wedding is happening in Switzerland. One of the attendees got inspired by the or very attracted to the way the event was organized. That foreigner, he wants to have a similar wedding organized in Switzerland. Now the customer is outside India, so now the place of supply will be Switzerland because one party is outside India and the event is happening outside India, right? So that will be the place of supply. So this is a quick recap of what we saw in the last video. So now let's go to the remaining services in this topic, right? So yeah, so now we'll look at services which has same treatment in both section 12 and section 13, friends, right? So um, so here admission to an event, right? So admission to an event, this service has the same place of supply in both section 12 and section 13. There is no proviso or exceptions like what we saw in organization of an event and destination transportation of goods. This has same treatment in both section 12 and section 13. So this event, it could be a cultural event, artistic event, sporting event, scientific educational event, or entertainment event, exhibition, fair, conference, these kind of events, right? So in these kind of events, what the law says, if both the parties are in India or both the parties are or either of the parties outside India, the place of supply will be the location of such event, right? So how is it different from the previous one? This is organization of an event, and what we are seeing now is admission to an event, right? These both are different. What is organization of an event? You organize the entire event, you manage the show right from deciding who's the when what should happen, who should come when, who are the performers you're going to invite, when you're going to, where you're going to organize, everything is taken care in organization of event. But admission to an event is a specific service where it's more like, I can say, an entry ticket. If you want to go and watch a show or attend a cricket match or a football match, an admission to that particular event, right, entertainment event or conference, exhibition, whatever it is, getting you admitted to an event is a specific service, and for that service you need to see where the event is happening, and that place will be the place of supply, right? So let's see an example for this. Mr. A of Bombay purchases entry tickets, right? So this is, guys, entry tickets, right? He purchases entry tickets from a website registered in Delhi, right? For a India versus Australia match at Chennai. So the first thing, what do you need to see, guys? It is section 12 or section 13. So here A is from Bombay, the website is from Delhi. So the supplier and the receiver both are in India, section 12. And what is the place of supply? I mean, what is the service that is dealt here? Entry ticket, which is entry to an event. What event? India's Australia match and entertainment or a sports event, we can say, right? So here, what will be the place of supply? The location of such event will be the place of supply. So here the match is happening at Chennai. So where will the place of supply be? Chennai, right? So similarly, let's say Mr. B from Australia, right? So Mr. B from Australia purchases again entry tickets, right? Entry tickets from a website registered in Delhi for India is Australia match at Chennai, right? So here, who's the supplier? The website registered in Delhi, right? So supplier is in India. Who's the recipient? Mr. B from Australia, right? So either party that is is outside India. So which section will go? Section 13. But what service are we dealing with here? Admission to an event, right? Admission to an event. If you see, this is grouped under same treatment. So admission to an event has same treatment in both section 12 and section 13. So the place of supply will be same as what we saw in the above example, Chennai, right? So the place of supply will be Chennai, even for an Australian fan. So the Indian fan comes to the event or an Australian fan comes to the event. The place of supply is going to be Chennai because the match is happening at Chennai, right? So now let's look at the uh, another service which also has same treatment in both section 12 and section 13, right? Section 12 uh, and section 13 has same treatment for even this service. What service is this? On-board service provided on-board a conveyance, right? So what is service provided on-board a conveyance, guys? So let's say Mr. A of Bombay, he boards a flight to Chennai, right? And let's say the flight is scheduled to go from Delhi to Bombay to Chennai, right? So Mr. A is from Bombay. He is boarding the flight in the Bombay leg of this journey, right? And from Bombay, let's say he's traveling to Chennai. Now, in this scenario, let's say after getting onto the plane, A is availing onboard gaming services, right? So he is availing onboard gaming services as soon as he boarded the flight in the Bombay leg, right? So now this is a service which is provided on board a conveyance, right? So here our conveyance which we are talking about is aircraft, right? So in this aircraft, Mr. A boarded at Bombay, but what will be the place of supply for this service which is provided on board a conveyance? The law says place of supply is the first scheduled point of departure, right? So the first scheduled point of departure of that conveyance for this journey is Delhi, Bombay, Chennai. So which is the first scheduled point of departure for the conveyance? Delhi. Even though Mr. A boarded the flight in Bombay leg of the journey, you need to see which is the first point where the conveyance started. It started in Delhi and then it came to Bombay and then it goes to Chennai. So even though Mr. A boarded in Bombay and availed the gaming service in Bombay, still the place of supply will be Delhi because that is the first scheduled point of departure for the conveyance, right? So the same will happen. Let's say Mr. A boarded in Delhi and he is availing the service only in the Bombay to Chennai leg. Delhi to Bombay, let's say Mr. A has slept. He didn't use any service. From Bombay to Chennai, he is using the service. Now, will the place of supply change just because he is using the service in Bombay? No. The place of supply for any services provided on board a conveyance will always be the first scheduled point of departure for that conveyance. So please don't see where the service is being availed by the passenger. Look at from where the conveyance is starting. Whichever is the first scheduled point of departure, that place will be place of supply, my friends. So in this case, the place of supply is Delhi, right? So these two services has the same treatment in both section 12 and section 13. So what are these two services? Admission to an event. That event can be education event, artistic event, entertainment event, exhibition, fair, whatever we saw, and even services ancillary to this event. Let's say there are people who guide you to say which seat your stand comes, where you need to get seated in the stadium, right? So those people who are providing you this service, which is ancillary to the admission, this will also have the same treatment, guys. So if you look at this, it says admission to an event and ancillary services. So those services which are ancillary to admission will also have the same treatment as admission to the event, right? So admission to the event and services provided on board a conveyance both has the same treatment in section 12 and section 13. So don't see whether the customer is or the supplier is in India or outside India. If it is going to be an admission to an event like cricket match, Indian fan or Australian fan, or on board a conveyance, wherever the person is boarding the conveyance, you just need to see you just need to see uh, what is the place of supply regardless of section 12 or 13 for these two services. It will be the same under both these sections, right? Now, so these two services enjoys same treatment under section 12 and 13 for place of supply. So hope we are clear on these two services. So now let's go to the next grouping under place of supply, guys, right? So far we have covered 7 services. you know this T3OI which we saw, and then we've covered admission to an event and onboard a conveyance, right? Having the same treatment for these two. Now, performance based service, guys. So this I have grouped it into performance based. These services, the place of supply will be performance based, the place of performance, right? So what are these services in section 12 and section 13? We'll just have a look. Say section 12, in section 12 these services will be said as for these services the place of supply will be the place where it is actually performed. What are those services? It is restaurant, catering, fitness service, plastic surgery service, let's say other grooming services, all these services, the place where the service is performed, that will be the place of supply, right? So even the cosmetic surgery, all these grooming services, all these, the place of supply shall be the location where it is actually performed, that will be the place of supply. So this is under section 12, that is both of you are in India. So let's say you are a party, you are working for a company in Delhi, and you are coming for a short visit to Chennai, and here you are staying in a or you are eating in a restaurant joint. Now the place of supply, even though you give him your GST number, whatever, you say you are registered customer, what is the service he is providing to you? He is providing you restaurant service. For a restaurant service, when both of you are in India, the place of supply will be the place where the service is performed, the restaurant service is performed, that is Chennai, right? So the place of service will be Chennai. Even though you might be coming from Delhi or Bangalore or Goa, still the place of supply for restaurant service will be the place of performance, which is nothing but the place where the restaurant is located. That will only be the place of supply. In our case, the Chennai restaurant, right? So under section 12, restaurant, catering. Now let's say catering example. You are a caterer located in Chennai. And now let's say there is a marriage or there is an event happening in Kerala. So they are inviting you to do some catering services for that event in Kerala. Now you are going for that particular event in Kerala and performing the catering service. Now you are from Chennai, but where are you providing the catering service? You are providing the catering services in Kerala. So the place of supply will be the place where you actually perform the catering service, which is Kerala. So here the place of supply is Kerala, right? So similarly, fitness, plastic surgery, cosmetic surgery, personal grooming, like say your makeup service or your pedicure, manicure, whatever the beauty related services, all these will follow the same principle. You need to see where the service is actually performed. That place will be the place of supply, my friends. Now this is in relation to section 12. That is when both of you are in India, this particular set of services, you need the place of supply is determined based on where it is actually performed, right? Similarly, section 13 also has performance based service, which is something different, but the place of supply is the place where it is actually performed, right? So what is section 13? What are the performance based service in section 13, right? Section 13 says services supplied in respect of goods, right? Services supplied in respect of goods which is required to be made physically available to the supplier, either by the recipient or on behalf of the recipient. Someone makes the goods available to the supplier, and the supplier is providing a service in respect of such goods, right? So then in that case, the law says the place of supply will be the place where the service is performed. Let's see a um, example to this, right? So you'll mostly have services like let's say cargo clearing, right? So what will happen in a cargo clearing example? The recipient has to provide you the goods. Without the goods, you can't provide cargo clearance services in India, right? Similarly, storage services, the goods you are going to store in your warehouse, right? So without the goods coming into the service provider's physical presence, he can't store the goods and he can't provide you the service of storing the goods, right? So these services like storage, warehouse, or cargo clearances, or let's say certification of some food safety standards or some technical analysis, which all you need to provide the service on those goods in respect of those goods, and you can't provide the service unless the goods comes into your physical possession or comes physically in your presence. You cannot provide these services. If it is in that nature, then wherever the service is performed, that place will be considered as the place of supply, guys. Now, there is one interesting exclusion to this, right? So, if you see the next in the brackets, this excludes temporary imports for repairs or treatments or process, right? So this performance based rule does not apply for temporary imports into India, which is for the purpose of repairs, treatment, or process on those goods, right? And if the goods should be exported, right, after such repairs, treatment, or process without being put to use in India. If these conditions are satisfied, then the performance based rule will not apply, guys. So why this exclusion is there? It is quite simple. So what is going to happen if you generally say, if this exclusion was not there, just imagine the scenario. If this exclusion is not there, what will happen? Let's say there is a let's say a machine which is coming into India for repairs purposes, right? And you are repairing the goods and sending it outside India, right? So you are billing for this and you're realizing in foreign currency. Now, if you go and see the export of service provisions and you are providing repair service, right? If you see the export of service provision, one important condition is the place of supply should be outside India, my friends, right? But if this particular exclusion was not there, what would have happened? The place of supply will be the place of performance. Where is the place of performance? India. So here a person in India is receiving a machine from, let's say, Germany for some repairs to be made on those machinery. So the person in India is doing this repair on the goods, right? So if place of supply is going to be India, then even though he has a customer outside India, he receives in foreign currency, everything is there, he cannot say this is export of service, because one important condition, which is place of supply should be outside India, will not be satisfied. So this will result in denial of zero rating benefit for the supplier in India. So this temporary imports where there is no intention to use it in India, after the repairs or whatever process is done, you are going to send that back outside India without being put to any use in India, right? So in these cases, the law says no worries. For if you are only doing a temporary import and as soon as the service is done, you are going to send it back outside India, we will say performance based service will not apply for you. What does this mean? General rule will apply. What is the general rule? Location of the recipient. What is the location of recipient in our case? Germany, right? So what happens moment the place of supply goes outside India, you can claim export of service benefit because you will meet the condition of POS outside India for export of service. Assuming other conditions are satisfied, you will be able to enjoy this zero rating benefit for export of service. So for this purpose, temporary imports for repairs or treatment or process in respect of the goods, if carried out, then the performance based service will not apply. You need to go by the general rule, my friends. But uh, let's say like how we saw the storage warehouse, let's say another example we'll see for what performance based will apply. Now let's say you have a machinery in India, and for installing this machinery you are calling experts from, let's say, Germany to come to India so that he can do the installation service of that machine in India. So now here what happens, the recipient needs to make available these goods to the suppliers, who is the German party. Then only he can do the installation service, right? So what is the German suppliers doing? He is supplying a service in respect of goods, and that goods needs to be made physically available to that supplier by the recipient who is in India. Then only he can provide the installation service in India. So here the place of supply will be India, my friends. So here, because the place of performance, which is installation, is happening in India, so it is going to be place of supply will be India. However, a temporary imports into India which is going to exported back without any use in India, then in those cases, general rule, performance rule will not apply. Although in both the case, the goods are coming to the supplier so that he can perform some service and then it is going back, right? Still, this is the difference you need to have in mind. Temporary imports, general rule will apply, but whereas other cases, which is not in the nature of temporary imports, then performance based rule will apply, like how we saw that installation from Germany, or let's say vice versa, you are going to some other place outside India, you are sending your uh, experts outside India to install machinery outside India, and he is coming back. Here still the place of supply will be the place where he actually performed the service, which is installation service, which is outside India, and without recipient providing the goods, the supplier cannot provide installation service. Agreed? So this will satisfy this condition of performance based service for section 13, right? So this is section 13. These two goes hand in hand. You need to see, even though the goods comes in the possession of supplier, is it coming temporarily or is it coming for other purposes? That will determine whether it's performance based or general rule, right? Now there is another scenario which can happen. uh, let's say services is provided from a remote location by way of electronic means, guys. If you look at this para, services provided from a remote location by way of electronic means, right? So then the place of supply will be the location of the goods, location where the goods are situated at the time of supply of service. So now there are with so much of digitization and remote monitoring and technology in place, many services can be provided electronically from a remote place, my friends. So if a service is provided from a remote location by way of electronic means, what is remote location? You need not be on site where the goods are located. You can be at a remote location which is other than the site. You can be in India, still provide service to a party in US, or a party in US can provide service to a person in India, right? He is in a remote location, right? And how is he providing the service? He is providing through electronic means, by way of technology, by way of computer, by way of software. If by way of an electronic means, if he is providing a service, then in that case, if he is providing a service on goods, then the place of supply will be the location of the goods, where the goods where it is situated at the time of supply. Let's say a software maintenance service is provided by a US party to a Indian customer, right? So he will not come to India to provide the service, right? He will operate from US, and he will take care of the software. He will monitor all the systems in India, and he will provide this AMC service or maintenance service from USA. So here, where are the goods located, or the in India at the time that the service is provided? So place of supply will be India. Let's say there is some oil field pipelines which are located outside India, and let's say some temperature control or the flow pressure control, these are taken care by a party in India. So although these pipelines, the flows, everything is outside India, the party is in India and he is monitoring it from India, right? So let's say these are located at a place somewhere in Europe, right? So place of supply will be Europe, where the goods are located at the time of supply, right? So this is another exception you have in section 13. So section 13 had three scenarios: performance based, one; normal, where service is supplied in respect of goods which are required to be made physically available to the supplier in order for the supplier to provide the service. Then where the place of actual performance will be considered as the place of supply. However, if it is a temporary imports which is going to be exported after use, then you need to follow the general rule, which is the location of recipient, right? Third scenario, if the service is provided from a remote location by way of electronic means, then the place of supply will be the location where the goods are situated at the time of supply, right? And another thing to note, guys, originally temporary imports for repairs was only there in the Act. IGST Amendment Act 2018 included the words reports or any other treatment or process. So the temporary imports can be for repairs or any other treatment or process on the goods, right? So now we saw these five services T3OI, and then we saw the same treatment services under 12 and 13, which is admission to an event and services on board a conveyance. And then we saw performance based services. Section 12, there is a bunch of services like restaurant, catering, fitness, beauty services, cosmetic surgery, plastic surgery, all these performance based actual performance will be place of supply. Section 12. And for section 13, we saw three scenarios: service in respect of goods which have to be physically made for the supplier, like installation services. And second, we saw temporary imports will follow general rule, location of recipient. If it's provided from a remote location by electronic means, then you need to see where the goods are situated. Even though you provide from remote location, see in which or where the goods on which you are providing the service is located at the time of supply. That place will be the place of supply. So simple. So these are the three groupings we have seen so far, right? So now there is another one category to section 13, which is what if the service are supplied to good. We saw when the service are supplied to goods, where the goods need to come to the physical control of the supplier. Now what if the situation where service is supplied to an individual, and that individual has to come into the physical presence of the supplier in order to provide the service, right? Let's take an example. Let's say there is a modeling company in Europe, or let's say there's a modeling company in Paris, and that company has a beauty pageants, or they have some models who needs to participate in a contest, let's say, which is happening in Lucknow. And for this purposes, they have sent their models to India, and they are availing service of the parties or of the beauticians in India, right? So for these beauticians to provide the service to those models, the models have to physically come to India in order to receive the service, right? You can't provide beauty service unless those individuals comes to India. So here you need to note the contract is with the modeling company outside India. The beautician is having contract with the modeling company outside India, but the modeling company has, let's say, 10 models who have to come to India in order to receive the service. So service is supplied to an individual requiring physical presence of such individual. That individual can be on behalf of the customer, not necessarily the company is an entity, but on behalf of the customer, some individuals are coming into India to receive that services. Then again, the place of supply will be the place of performance, which is Lucknow, right? Now, so now let's go into the next grouping. Or now, since you saw, this is the major groupings which we can have for place of supply, my friends, which is B2B, B2C, same treatment, performance based services. So once you are very clear on these, now there are some specific services which we will deal one by one. Let's say immovable property, right? So immovable property, um, this is again common in section 12 and section 13. It is location where such immovable property is located or intended to be located, right? So immovable property, not just what to say, accommodation, it also includes services directly in relation to immovable property. Let's say architect service, interior decorate service, right? Or engineer services, accommodation. All these are services directly in relation to immovable property. So in these cases, the place of supply will be the location where such IP, immovable property, is located or intended to be located, right? So now let's say an example. Mr. A, an architect of Bombay, appointed by Messrs. ITC Gurgaon. So both of them are in India. You go to which section, my friends? Section 12. To provide plan for property in Delhi. So he is an architect, and they are asking him for a architect plan for a property in Delhi, right? So what is the service we are dealing with? Architect, which is directly in relation to immovable property service. So what is the place of supply for services directly in relation to immovable property, my friends? The place where it is located or intended to be located. So here the property is intended to be located in Delhi. So what will be the POS? Delhi, which is the location of the immovable property. So next example, let's say same scenario, that is Mrs. ITC of Gurgaon asks Mr. A of Bombay to give a plan for a property in UAE, United Arab Emirates, which is in the Middle East, outside India. Now, will the answer be same? Will the place of supply be UAE? No. There is a proviso which says if the property is located or intended to be located outside India, this proviso comes in section 12. If both the supplier and the recipient are in India, but the property is intended to be located outside India, then place of supply will be the location of recipient in India and not the location of immovable property. So in our case, the place of supply is the location of the recipient, which is Gurgaon. Read this as Gurgaon, my friends. A is from Bombay, ITC Gurgaon. So in this case, you need to go to the place of the general rule, which or the location of recipient and not the location of immovable property. It's a proviso to section 12. You see, section 12 in most of the places has these kind of provisos because the intention is when the supplier and the recipient, both of them are in India, then the government wants to tax this service, even though the event, let's say in the organization of event, if you remember this, if the event is outside India, but if you both are in India, then the law said place of supply is location of recipient. Similarly, for immovable property, if you both are in India, you are in Bombay and the recipient is Gurgaon, but the property, that is the immovable property, is outside India, then the law says no, place of supply will be the location of recipient in India and not the property. I mean not UAE, right? However, let's say the same Mr. Architect A of Bombay is appointed by Mrs. Realtors UAE. This is a party in UAE for a project in UAE, right? So similarly, like in the previous example, he is going to give a plan for a property in UAE, but who is appointing him? Not a person or not a party in India, not Mrs. ITC of Gurgaon. He is appointed by Mrs. Realtors of UAE. A party outside India is giving him a project to uh, give a plan for a property outside India. In this case, there are no such provisos here. Section 13 is very clear. There is only one place of supply when it comes to immovable property, the location where the property is held. So in this case, located or intended to be located. Here, the property is located at UAE. Hence, the place of supply will be UAE, location of such immovable property, because this is coming under section 13 and section 13 does not have such exceptions. When it is immovable property, it is very simple. It is location where the location of such immovable property will be place of supply for section 13 when either party is outside India. However, section 12, be careful, where the immovable property is makes a difference. If it is in India, then the place of immovable property. If it is outside India, then the location of recipient. Right now, since we saw after these 5 services, we saw same treatment, performance based, immovable property. There is one thing which we need to see now. The 13 subsection 6, guys. What section 13 subsection 6 says is, if I can say 13 subsection 2 was the general rule. So this is 13 subsection 2 general rule, location of recipient, and then you have 13.3, 13.4, 13.5, right? And then 13.6 says, for performance based service, organization or admission of an event, and immovable property service, which is nothing but this organization of an event and uh, admission to an event, organization of an event, admission to an event, and then for performance based service, it can be in respect of goods or it can be in respect of individuals. If these three and also immovable property, right? For these 4 services, if it is provided under section 13, like if either party is in India, one party is outside India, and the service dealt with is any of these 4, right? That is organization or admission to an event, performance based service, immovable property. So if any of these services are involved and the service is provided in more than one location, including a taxable territory, then place of supply is the taxable territory. What is taxable territory? For brevity, let's say taxable territory is India, right? So, if let's say you are providing a service of um, testing of emission standards for a particular vehicle, right? So a new product is launched by a, let's say an MNC firm is launching a new bike in India or in India and let's say also Sri Lanka, and he wants to get the emission standards tested for that vehicle in those regions. So now you have a, let's say, a firm in Delhi who can provide this service. Now he is providing this service, let's say in 3 states, in Karnataka, in Tamil Nadu, and in Gujarat, right? So he is providing, let's say, 25, 25, 25 percentage in these 3 states, and the remaining 25 percentage is doing in Colombo. He is providing that service also in outside India, outside the taxable territory. So he is providing the service in 4 places. 3 places are in India, 1 place is outside India. Now, this is a, if you remember, this is a performance based service, right? Because the goods have to come physically to the supplier in order for him to technically test the emission conditions or emission to give the certificates for those vehicles that these are compliant with the norms. So for him to provide the service, he has to physically receive the goods, which is one of the uh, uh, specified service, which is performance based service. But here the service is provided in India and also in a place outside India. So now a question would come, which will be the place of supply? Because for 25, 20, 75 percentage of the work done, it is in India. The place of actual performance is in India. But for that 25%, the place of supply is outside India in Colombo, Sri Lanka. Now this clarifies, that is section 13 subsection 6 clarifies, if you are dealing with any of these 4 services, organization or admission to an event, performance based service, immovable property, right? If these 4 services are dealt with and the place of supply is in both the in 2 places, one place being a taxable territory, then it is deemed that the place of supply is in taxable territory, right? So you need not make it as a, you not get confused, the place of supply will be deemed to be the taxable territory, right? So this is what section 13 subsection 6 says. It also says if the service is provided in more than one state, let's say it is happening in Maharashtra, Tamil Nadu, Karnataka, right? So then the place of supply shall be in each state proportionate to the value in each state, right? So let's say you are giving asking a event manager to do organize events in these three states. Let's say he is organizing IPL in these 3-4 states, right? So uh, the service is provided in more than one state. So now how will you determine which place the service is provided? Now uh, the service is provided in each respective state to the extent proportionate to the value. Let's say 30% value in Tamil Nadu, 20% in Maharashtra, and 50% in West Bengal. So in this is proportionate to the value. The contract should say this is the value in which the service has been agreed to provide in each state. Then the place of supply to that extent will be in these respective states. So this is 13 subsection 6. What if the service is in more than one state? What if the service is in a place outside the taxable territory and inside the taxable territory, right? So now let's go into the next service, right? Now here we are going to see banking service, guys. Banking service, section 12, that is the bank is also in India, the supplier is also in India, the customer is also in India. Now the place of supply is the location of the recipient in the supplier's records, right? So if you remember, this is similar to the insurance service also. The location of recipient in the records of the supplier will be considered as the place of supply. However, if it is not available, then the provision says place of supply can be considered as the location of supplier, right? So now let's take an example. Let's say you are going into you have an account in Chennai branch, and you are going into the bank to take a DD from the bank, and let's say the bank is charging you some 25 rupees for the DD, right? So for this 25 rupees, uh, they know that you are having an account in Chennai, you are going to your home branch to avail the service. So they know that location of the recipient is Chennai. On their records they will be having this information. So since they have the information that the location of recipient in the records is Chennai, place of supply will be considered as Chennai. Whatever is your location in their records is the place of supply. However, you have an account in Chennai in say SBI Bank, but however you went to Syndicate Bank or you went to Axis Bank to take a DD. You are a walk-in customer there, and you are not giving them proper details on the location of the recipient. So in that case, if it is not available for them, then they can consider the location of the supplier itself as the place of supply. That is, let's say the branch is in Nagapatnam, then Nagapatnam will be, they will consider Nagapatnam itself as place of supply, even though you may be coming from Bangalore, Chennai, wherever. If you are not given, you are just a walk-in customer to them, place of supply will be considered as location of supplier, since the recipient's detail is not available with the supplier, right? So this is section 12. What if banking services are provided when both the parties are within India, guys, right? So now section 13, right? Section 13 also has banking service, but it is a little more specific. What do I mean by little more specific? Section 13 says services by a banking company or a financial institution or NBFC to an account holder, right? It says an account holder. Then in that case, it says the place of supply is location of the supplier, right? Then it says place of supply is location of supplier. So there are two things here. One, services should be provided by a banking company to an account holder. That condition has to be satisfied, right? So if that condition is satisfied, that is the recipient is an account holder, then the provision says place of supply will be the location of supplier. Unlike section 12, the default rule was location of recipient, home branch. They know your recipient's location, so immediately that is the place of supply. However, if it is section 13, it is opposite. First, it is the location of supplier. That will be the place of supply, right? So now, let's take the situation. Um, let's say same SBI Bank in Chennai is having a customer who is outside India. Let's say an NRA is having a account in India, and that account is also defined to mean an account bearing interest, right? Only when an account is bearing interest, it is considered as an account for the purpose of this section, right? It includes NRE and NRO, non-resident external and non-resident ordinary account is also considered to be an account for the purpose of this section. So if an NRA is having an NRE account or other accounts which pays him interest on the balance that he's kept with the bank, he's earning some interest out of it. Then for those cases, for those accounts, the person having such account is considered to be an account holder. If that account does not pay any interest, then he is not an account holder for the purpose of this section, right? So now here, if let's say that NRA is wanting to open a NRE account in the Chennai SBI branch. So now there will be some processing fees or account opening fees the bank is going to charge him. Now for this purpose, what will be the place of supply, my friends? Or let's say he is going to take some facility or some other processing charges is being charged to him. Let's say check issue charges or whatever. He's an account holder and he's having an account which bears interest, right? So whatever charges the bank is going to charge to that person outside India, the place of supply will be considered as the bank's location itself. That is location of the supplier itself, because they are dealing with a party outside India. Section 13. Section 13 says POS will be LOS, location of supplier, if they are dealing with if they are dealing with an account holder. However, if he is not an account holder, what do we mean by not an account holder? If he is having an account which does not pay him interest, it is just a account which does not pay him interest, then in those cases this rule will not apply. You will have to follow the general rule of section 13, my friends, which is location of recipient, which is outside India. The NRE's location, let's say if he is in Dubai, the location is going to be Dubai, because the place of supply will be Dubai, because he is not an account holder. So have this in mind. When it is a NRE customer, that is outside India customer, you need to see, is he an account holder or not first. If he is an account holder, then POS is LOS, location of supplier. If he is not an account holder, then it is going to be LOR, location of recipient. Right? Are we clear? This is section 13, banking services. I hope you have section 12 very clear. It is location of recipient. If locate on the records of the supplier, if it is not available, like a walk-in customer taking DD in India, we often do that, right? You go, let's say you're paying fees to the institute, they say you take it in syndicate bank. You may not have an account in syndicate bank, but still you will go and take. You are a walk-in customer. In those situations, you both are in India, still they will charge you GST considering place of supply to that branch location. This is section 12. Only if it is not available, you go for LOS. But section 13 for banking is vice versa. First it is LOS if you're account holder. If you're not an account holder, then only it's LOR, recipient. Right? So hope we are clear on the banking services, my friends. So now let's see another service in section 13, which also has POS as LOS, guys. Right? So what is that service? Services of an intermediary, right? Services of an intermediary. Uh, the place of supply is going to be location of supplier. So who is an intermediary, my friends? The the defines intermediary. Intermediary means a broker, an agent, or any other person by whatever name called, who arranges or facilitates the supply of goods or service or both, right? Or even securities, right? Or even securities between two or more persons, but does not include a person who supplies a service or who supplies such goods or service or both, or securities on his own account, he is considered to be an intermediary. Simply put, an intermediary is a person who facilitates a supply between two persons. He will not provide the main service per se. He only facilitates both the persons. Like say he could be an agent, he could be a broker, he could be any other name. You know, agent brokers are just names. The model has little difference, but in essence they act as intermediary. They connect two persons to provide the service, right? So let's say you have a travel agent, right? A travel agent, does he take you in the flight? No, he connects you to the person who takes you in the flight, right? So you go to a travel agent to book a flight, right? So he is an intermediary for your travel services. Now, what is the place of supply for this service? The location of service supplier will be the place of supply, right? So let's say section 13. So let's say you are a person outside India, you are in contact with a intermediary in India to book a ticket, right? So for his commission, which is going to charge for you to travel, for the facilitating your travel, place of supply for this commission will be India. Even though you may be a party outside India, for place of supply for the commission he is charging you will be in India, because he is an intermediary who facilitated the supply of service between the airlines and you, right? So he is an intermediary who connected you both. Now, for his service, that is the commission for connecting you both, the place of supply will be location of such intermediary, location of such supplier, right? Irrespective of the airlines or where you are located, its place of supply will be the location of supplier. So this is again in section 13, my friends, where either party is outside India, place of supply will be the location of supplier, right? Now, so we saw for banking also the place of supply was location of supplier. However, it should be an account holder, my friends. If he is not an account holder, location of recipient. And now for intermediary also we saw in section 13, place of supply will be location of supplier. Now, this is an interesting provision. Usually there will be a little bit of tricky questions in this, but it's very simple, guys. You just need to, first time when you listen, just understand this provision. It's very simple. You will not get tricked, right? So what section 13 says, in respect of services of hiring of means of transport, right? MOT is short form for means of transport. If the service is in respect of hiring of means of transports and yachts, right? And yachts, then place of supply will be the location of supplier. However, this does not includes, or it is not applicable for hiring of vessel or hiring of aircraft, right? If it is only applicable for any means of transport other than vessel and aircraft, but it includes yachts. What is yachts? A yacht is more of a small boat which is used for some, it's more of a pleasure activity boat. It is not a typical conveyance thing, but it's more of a pleasure ride. So if any means of transport, including a yacht, if that's being hired, then the place of supply will be the location of supplier only, right? If it is being hired. So, but if what is being hired, if you're hiring a vessel, right, a ship, not a yacht, a ship, a boat, then which is not a yacht, then for these this rule will not apply, guys. For these general rule will apply. Just remember one thing, wherever specific rules will not apply, general rules will apply, right? That's very simple. You can't say we can't identify POS. Every transaction you are supposed to identify place of supply. If there is no specific place of supply, please apply the general place of supply. So in here, when they clearly says it is not applicable for vessel or aircraft, which means this particular place of supply, that is location of supplier, this provision is not applicable for vessels or aircraft. So the general rule will apply for vessels or aircrafts. So you can remove vessels and aircrafts from this provision. What this provisions applies is for any means of transport and yachts other than vessels and aircrafts is what this will apply. If this is hired for up to 1 month, short term, up to 1 month, if this is hired, then the place of supply is the location of supplier. Let's say you are going into a place in Bombay, or say let's say place in Pondicherry or Kerala, and you are hiring a yacht, right? So they give you yachts on hire. You will hire it for, let's say, one day or a weekend or probably a week. So these short term hires, the law says place of supply will be location of supplier, right? Say the party is coming from a corporate is outside India, is booking these yachts for hire these yachts for a week. So even though the party is outside India, the supplier is in India, the yachts is taken on hire for a week. Where will be the place of supply? The place of supply will be Kerala, which is in India, the location of the supplier, right? If one party is outside India, uh, here the yacht is hired for a period less than a month, so it is location of supplier. So if you look at this table, so first thing you need to see is what is the conveyance that you are dealing with, right? Are you dealing with vessel or aircraft that is being hired? Then in that situation, you need not see the time limits and all. That is it less than 1 month, more than 1 month, doesn't make a difference. If what is being hired is a vessel or aircraft, straight away go to general rule, my friends, which is location of recipient. That will apply for hiring of vessels or aircrafts. However, if it is not vessels or aircrafts that is being hired, if it is any other means of transport that is being hired, right? It could be even probably some land transport, or it could be yachts in our case. If it is any other means of transport or yachts, then it is very important that you see what is the time period of the hire, right? Because that makes the difference. If it is going to be less than 1 month, right? That's what we saw. Up to 1 month, right? Up to 1 month, place of supply will be the location of supplier, right? However, if it's more than 1 month, then again the general rule will only apply, even though it is other than vessels, aircrafts. Even if yachts is hired, let's say they are hiring the yachts for 2 months. The corporate company is coming here and they say, we want your yachts for 2 months. We are hiring your yachts for 2 months. Now what will happen? Can you say the POS is LOS, that is Kerala will be the location of supplier? No, or the place of supply? No. The place of supply will be the location of recipient as per the general rule. Why? The specific rule will not apply in this case, because the hiring of the yacht is more than a month. Up to a month is when the specific rule will apply. If it is more than a month, specific rule will not apply. You go to the general rule. So please take note of this table. That is, what are you hiring? What is the conveyance that is being hired? Is a vessel or aircraft? Straight away go to the general rule, location of recipients. If it's other than vessel or aircrafts, including a yachts, then see the time limit which it is being hired. If it is up to a month, then it is location of supplier. If it is more than a month, then it is general rule, location of recipient, right? So hope this is clear. So this is the third place where again section 13 says location of supplier. So there are three services in section 13 which says POS is LOS, which is banking service provided to an account holder, and then you have intermediary travel agent, right? For his commission, intermediary service, it is POS is LOS, and then you have hiring of other means of transport and yachts up to a month, location of supplier. So more than a month, vessel or aircraft, both follows general rule. As you can see, both these follows general rule, right? So now my friends, we have covered uh, same treatment, performance based service, and then we saw immovable property, and then three services, which is banking, intermediary, and hiring of means of transport, right? So then there are only two more services pending under place of supply, my friends, which is one under section 12 and one under section 13, right? So what is it? telecommunication services for section 12 and OIDAR service for section 13. So these two are pending. So these two services, I thought we will cover it in the separate video, a very short video. And the reason for covering it is OIDAR, my friends, is comes in the GST Act at more than one place. So I thought not only place of supply, other provisions relating to OIDR also, if we cover in this slide, it will be much easier for you to appreciate what is OIDAR and what impact this has or what implications this has in the GST provisions, so that it is easy for you to understand OIDAR as a topic and to appreciate where POS has its relevance in the OIDAR scenario. So I'm just having telecommunication and OIDAR topics for the last video in this series, place of supply. So otherwise we have covered almost all the services under place of supply with this grouping. If you remember the first 5 services, which is T3OI, right? So there were training, transportation of goods, transportation of passengers, organization of an event, insurance, and then you have same treatment, 2 services, admission, India Australia match, both the fans come, still it's going to be Chennai, on board a conveyance, wherever you get in the flight, see where the flight first started, that is going to be the place of supply. Performance based services, so section 12 had a bunch of services like restaurant, catering. The caterers went to Kerala. Kerala will be the place of supply, even though they are from Chennai. And then and then you had the fitness and plastic surgery, cosmetic surgery. All these were performance-based service under section 12. Section 13, where either party is outside India, you almost had 4 scenarios for section 13. That is where it is in respect of goods coming under the physical presence of the supplier. Then in those cases, place of supply is place of performance. Example, the installation services where the experts from Germany came to Bombay to install the machinery. You need to give the machinery to them to install. So that the performance based service, place of supply performance. The second scenario was services in respect of temporary imports into India, where temporary imports for repairs or treatments or process, any of these three is done on the goods and without put any use in India. After the service is provided, you then export it back outside India. In those cases, the place of supply will be location of recipient and not the place of actual performance. General rule will apply, right? And then the third was services provided from a remote location by electronic means in respect of goods. So there the place of supply was the location where the goods are situated at the time of supply. That was the place of supply, right? So then the fourth scenario is services in respect of individuals who need to come in the physical presence of the supplier in order for the supplier to provide the service. The modeling company, where from Paris, the modeling company is sending their models for the contest in Lucknow. Then the beauty company here will provide service to the models physically. Then for these services, the models need to be in the physical presence of the beauty company in order to provide those beauty services, right? So these were the 4 scenarios in section 13. 3 for goods, 1 for individuals. So these are more of performance based service, right? And then we had again immovable property. Immovable property, the place of supply for section 12 and 13 is same, that is where the immovable property is situated or intended to be situated. However, for section 12 alone there is a proviso, that is if both of the parties are in India but only the property is outside India, then this rule will not apply. Place of supply will be the location of recipient, right? So this was immovable property for section 12 and 13. Then you had banking services. Banking services, section 12, place of supply is the location of recipient in the records of the supplier. However, if it is not available, location of supplier. If you remember, we saw the example of DD, right? You go to your home branch and take DD, they have all the information about you. So obviously, they will take what is your location of in their records. So that will be considered as the place of supply, location of recipient. However, if you are going to Nagapattinam or someplace and you run into that syndicate bank, like say ICICI asks you to take a DD in syndicate bank, then you go as a walk-in customer. They may not have the complete details of you. They can consider their location itself as the place of supply. That is location of supplier, because if they don't have the recipient's details on records. right? So this is section 12, guys. Section 13. So if you have an NRE outside India, he is having an account in SBI branch of Chennai. That account pays him interest, NRE or NRO account which pays him interest, or any other account which pays him interest. So whatever charges you charge to that party outside India, that for those charges, place of supply will be location of supplier in India. So SBI Chennai will treat SBI Chennai itself as place of supply, location of supplier, because the service is provided to a party outside India who is an account holder. However, if he is not an account holder, then in those cases, general rule will apply, my friends. Place of supply will be the location of recipient. Hope you are clear till this. And then we had intermediary services in section 13. For intermediary services, travel agent services we saw, that is for him, he's facilitating supply between two parties, right? So here the law says for those kinds of intermediaries who facilitate supplies between two parties, the place of supply is going to be the location of such supplier, right? Again, POS is LOS. There's another situation in section 13 where POS is LOS, that is hiring of conveyance. So the first question, if you remember the table, you need to see what is the conveyance that is being hired. Is it a vessel or aircrafts? If it is vessel or aircrafts, then straight away general rule, no time limit. The question might confuse you by saying hired for 1 month, hired for 2 months, hired for 1 week. No, if it's vessel or aircraft that is being hired, then the place of supply is going to be location of recipient, general rule will apply. However, if it is other than vessel or aircrafts, any other means of transport is hired, including a yacht, right? So in that case, you need to see till how long is that particular conveyance being hired. If it is more than 1 month, then again general rule, similar to vessels or aircraft. If it's more than 1 month, go by the general rule. If it is only up to a month, then you need to go for the location of supplier will be the place of supply. Like in our case, if the corporate company is booking the yacht for 2 weeks, then that is the location. POS will be the LOS. Kerala will only be considered as a location of supply. However, they are willing to take the yacht for 2 months. So then you can't say Kerala is the POS. You will say the location of the recipient. If it's the outside India place will be the place of supply, right? So so this is just a quick summary of what we have discussed so far in today's video. And then there are two more services which is pending, that is telecommunication for section 12 and OIDR for section 13. Since these are little more these have little more layers from the GST perspective, and you can have a couple of more scenarios to discuss. I'm not discussing it along with this since it will be a little more overwhelming to combine with these services. So, but however, uh, barring these two services, if you are able to have this grouping in your mind, that is B2B, B2C, T3OI, same treatment, performance based, and these four services, right? So then almost majority of the place of supply is on your list. You just need to understand the remaining two services, and then you're good to go with regard to place of supply. And the more you practice with examples and stuff, this will help you more to have this in mind. And the reason I'm having this complete table at one slide is because for you to catch up with the whatever we have discussed so far. So it will be easy for you to have as a one snapshot remembrance of what is being discussed. So I think this video would have been useful to you. So please share your feedback in your comments, share it with your friends, and give a thumbs up if you do like the video and the way it has been presented. So any feedbacks, constructive feedbacks are welcome. So I'll meet you guys in the next video where we'll be covering telecommunication and OIDR. With that, the place of supply for service series is over, and we'll meet in the next videos, my friends. So thank you. See you in the next video.